So anyway, but Scott's middle name is QRP, by the way. Did you guys know that? No. Yeah. So anyway, so we're going to talk a little bit about QRP tonight, and give you a chance to learn a little bit, and then.
So a quick show of hands: who has operated HF QRP, meaning 10 watts or less?
I did it by accident once.
I forgot to turn the amp on.
You made me. So yeah, I gotta put my hand
See?
up. Yeah.
All right. And of those, would you do it again?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect.
Okay, what is QRP? Who knows what QRP is? Or you might think you know what QRP is, but you might not know all the history behind it. You might not really know You even like. Okay, so back in the day, QRP was originally meant to tell an operator to reduce power. Okay, that was back here in the CW days and other times. It was a kind of a question mark: should I reduce power? Okay, but it's morphed into something much bigger, much bigger. Sometime in the mid-60s, QRP began to mean something in terms of power output, and it was kind of decided that 5 watts or less was QRP. But not everybody adhered to that, not even the radio manufacturers. Okay, but that's what happened in the 60s. You all know Part 97.313A. Everybody knows that? Okay. Use the minimum transmitter power necessary to carry out the desired communications. How many people do that? Or how many people just leave it turned up to 100 watts? Okay, you raise your hand. Both. Everybody can raise your hand there. Anyway, so I think a lot of people do this and a lot of people don't, right? Because a lot of people, like me, I don't have a lot of time to get on HF, and it just stays on 100 watts. And I get on, I hear somebody on, that's just what I do. Other people will be, maybe like Jim raised his hand, and other individuals in here would say, well, wouldn't it be cool if I could work that station on 50 watts? And then when you're having a QSO, and you say, well, wouldn't that be cool if I could continue this QSO on 25 watts? And you know what? Maybe it would be cool if I could continue the QSO on 5 watts. You just keep turning the power down, and most likely, you might get to a point where the other station can't hear you, but maybe not. Maybe you go all the way down and you're still having a QSO. So that should tell you something right there. So how many of you run less than 100 watts on your base station rig? How many have done that on? Okay, great. And how many do it on a regular basis? Okay, excellent. And that's really what Part 97.313A is all about. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Scott. Let him take the next.
So QRP operators typically do below 10 watts is kind of the norm. 5 watts is really the number that you should shoot for. A lot of folks successfully communicate with sub-milliwatt power. And there's a big group, mostly in the SOTA world, because they get altitude to be their friend. And they keep turning the power down, and seeing where they're getting to. And a lot of them have 2 or 3 watts just to start with before they start turning it down. So they get it down to the sub-milliwatt area, and they're getting these ginormous distances. It's insane how far you can get on 1 watt. So with that, the Colorado QRP Club, which I'm not familiar with, I know of them, but I don't know anybody there not partaking in anything that they do with the W0 CQC group. They will win field day as a 2A station on battery, but they will operate all QRP at 5 watts or less. So the new rules for field day are how many watts? What's the max you can run? Is there a max? Field day is 100 watts max, period, across the board. So they tried to even the playing field to get rid of those big, kilowatt stations out there. So it's 100 watts. So with that is, what's going on there?
Okay, we're gonna do a video for you here. Now, this is a very interesting video, and it's accurate. But you have to listen carefully. And if you don't get it the first time, we already decided we're gonna play it again.
And again,
And again. Yeah.
until you get.
So we're gonna see if we can get this going here. We think we got it done. I actually pull this video up every year or two and just watch it again. It's just amazing what we're talking about, and we can, yeah.
I've got friends who say life is too short for QRP. It's a funny thing to say, and I laugh along with them. But did you know that QRP works almost as well as a normal 100-watt transmission? Well, that can't be true, right? I mean, logically, if you're transmitting at 100 watts and you turn your power down to 5 watts, the person on the other side of your conversation will only hear you 5% as well as they did before, right? That's logical, but it's absolutely wrong. In fact, going from 100 watts to 5 watts will only reduce your signal on the other side by about 2 S units. Here's what the life is too short for QRP guys don't like to acknowledge, or maybe don't understand. It takes 4 times the power for our signals to be registered as 1 S unit stronger. So let's talk briefly about some simple math that'll take away the mystery of why QRP works, and therefore why life is plenty long enough for QRP. Our radios have an S meter that shows received signal strength. Doubling your transmitted power yields a 3 dB increase, but each additional S unit requires an increase of 6 dB. So it takes 4 times the transmitted power for the receiving station to show 1 additional S unit. Now, think about what that means for a minute. If I'm transmitting 100 watts and the person I'm talking to receives me at S7 or 7 S units, I'd have to turn up my power to 400 watts in order to be received as S8. To be received as S9, I'd have to multiply my power by 4 again and transmit 1,600 watts. And by the way, 1,500 watts is the legal limit here in the United States. Now, when band conditions are good, 100 watts often will get you a true S9 signal report, or maybe even better. So let's work the math backwards for just a minute. If I'm getting a true S9 signal report at 100 watts, I can drop my power to 1/4, 25 watts, and my signal will be perceived as S8. I can cut that power by 1/4 again, now only transmitting about 6 watts, and my signal will be received as S7. To be received as S6, we'll reduce our power again by a factor of 4. So now we're transmitting about 1.5 watts, and we're still being received as S6. Oh, I'm sorry, did I just take away the magic of QRP for you? Okay, now listen carefully and think about this. As long as your signal is above the receiving station's noise floor, your signal will be heard. As long as your signal is above the noise floor for the other station, he'll hear you. And that's why life is plenty long enough for QRP. Okay, now before I go, I have to acknowledge that there is a place in this hobby for amplifiers. People who own amplifiers are not evil. If the station you're trying to communicate with has trouble hearing you, you'll need to increase your power in order to have a conversation or be heard. Do I think the hobby would be better off if everyone turned off their amplifiers unless they were actually needed? Yes, I think so, and so does the FCC. But in some circumstances, when the other station has a high noise floor or band conditions are marginal, amplifiers can mean the difference in being heard or not. So, by all means, buy an amplifier, but please keep it turned off unless you can't complete the conversation without it. Okay, I'll step down from my soapbox now. Thanks for watching.
Okay, so if you want to revisit that video from time to time, do so. Because I think what you're going to find is that it makes a lot of sense, right? It makes a lot of sense why Terry at WB3 EVZ, who put some of this presentation together, he's a club member, he lives in Michigan. He drove all over this part of the United States, all of western part of the United States. He said he was a rep for a company that has medical devices, right? And he was driving 40, 50,000 miles a year with a CW key strapped to his leg, and he's made contacts all over the world. As a matter of fact, there isn't a week that goes by when he was working that he didn't communicate with a really good friend of his in France. And he was using the radio, never a radio more than 5 watts ever. And now one thing Scott mentioned, 5 watts was kind of considered nowadays. A couple of things about that. Before we go to the next slide. A lot of people now look at 5 watts as being maximum power QRP for CW. That's kind of how a lot of people are kind of looking at QRP. They're looking at 10 watts as maximum power QRP for sideband. Okay? Now, if you remember that video, there was, as he got all the way down, 6 watts. And then there's no coincidence that Yaesu built those 817s and 818s, and what was the maximum power output? 6 watts. So,
6 watts.
okay, people kind of put 2 and 2 together, and you talk to some people have been around, that they'll tell you that's why Yaesu did that. Anyway, so 10 watts, kind of maximum for sideband. We're going to talk about why CW is really king when it comes to QRP, as Terry will test it. If he's at Dayton sometime, you meet him, or maybe he'll come back in town every once in a while. He's a fantastic person to talk to about CW and CW Mobile. Some of his contacts are amazing. Okay, let's go on here. All right, Scott, over to you.
So on that, the challenge to run less power than a night light. That's where we're at 5 watts or 10. You're going to be able to work the world with that, as we've mentioned. It does improve your operating skills, the understanding of antennas, propagation, your radio. So with lower power that you're going to be putting out through that antenna, everything can get smaller. So how many people here are running some type of wire antenna at home that's 100 watt rated? How big is your balun? Not this big. So my QRP balun is as big as the end of your finger. Everything gets littler, which means it gets lighter. Just let you take it further. So it will improve your skills, your understanding. You start playing with QRP, you really learn what band conditions are all about, when they're good, when they're bad, and you're able still to make contacts. The inexpensive options for home brewing, as I just mentioned, a balun that's the end of your finger versus a bigger balun, they're not even an eighth of the price for the little balance that you're going to build. Wires can be much smaller with everything that you're doing, which makes it more affordable. Your big home antenna, which I've got my big 100 watt home antenna, and the wire is 12 gauge, but I know it's going to stay up through our winters. My QRP antenna, I am not going to put that up for the whole winter. It's 28 gauge wire. It's like hair, but it works great when I backpack and throw it up in the tree for a few hours, bring it back down. It works great. So with that, you'll be confident in your abilities and be ready in an emergency, because you can get out and deploy quick and easy. You are a better listener because you're working with QRP. Now, me as the operator and I'm QRP, you guys are QRO at 100 watts plus. You have to be the better listener than I do, because you're trying to pull my signal out. Which I challenge you, when you operate HF at home, to be that better listener and work some of those weaker stations, because you are going to find some real jewels buried out there in the bands of people that are operating bicycle mobile, pedestrian mobile. They're backpacking in the deep woods doing some of those things. So yeah, definitely work some of those weaker signals out there when you get the opportunity. So it says, my favorite reason QRP opens the door to operate portable anywhere, hiking, backpacking, on vacation, the beach, the hotel room, anywhere. So Andrew just went to Washington, DC. And the radio you took was a KX3, correct? So that is a QRP radio of sorts. It will do a max of 15 watts with external power, but I doubt you were operating any more than 10 on sideband, correct? Okay. And the antenna that he took was, I loaned him, it's an Elecraft little QRP antenna. It's this one. I'll set it up here in just a little bit, but it doesn't weigh anything. And the real beauty of it is you were operating at the Veterans Memorial.
Vietnam Veterans Memorial and the mall.
Okay,
So
so in the mall, they really don't like you pounding a stake in the ground and putting big antennas up. And they'll absolutely lose their minds when you throw the antenna up in the tree. All right? But that's a little tripod antenna. You can set it next to you in a chair. You can set it on a picnic table. And you had some of the National Park Rangers come by.
yeah, I mean, they never even really approached. They were just walking on an adjacent trail.
You
They
didn't
didn't bother me at all.
So, and the same goes with some of the sensitive national parks or even state parks that we have. Maybe it's a Native American site and they don't want you attaching to anything. But you can set up QRP in a variety of ways and still be able to work it. So it is a very viable skill to have, skill set, including your equipment, to be able to go out and deploy in places that most people couldn't put a radio up, play a radio, and be that unique contact for somebody.
And a quick story there, two quick stories, because we have to take a little extra time here. I met Leon at at the Hamfest at the Dayton Hamvention one year, and Leon worked for a battery manufacturer that was building experimental batteries. And anyway, make a long story short, he had a kilowatt linear on his back. And so this is in the QRP story. But he was going around, he had a radio and he was transmitting a kilowatt out of his backpack amplifier. It didn't seem like it was too safe, but he was gonna go in and the NCC had a testing booth. And at that year, he was going to go in and show them and everything, and we convinced him that probably wasn't the best idea. And then the other story I'll tell you is that one of the places that we learned a lesson about putting antennas in trees is our own Parker Radio Association field day. And a few years ago, we were using our launcher to launch an antenna up in a tree. And I think it was Wayne, I can't remember who it was, but they were launching that and they did
The initials might have been
Wayne. And man, it was a great shot. It went over the highest tree and came right down in front of the Ranger. No.
might not have gone so well.
That is a true story. And ever since then, we use verticals. And when people ask us, why do you use verticals at field day, how many have asked that? We give you a different story, right? We tell you, well, it's because they work better. That's what we tell you. But that now you know exactly why we use verticals and we don't use wires anymore, because we had a couple run-ins with U.S. Forest Service on that. And they're real strict, by the way. You tie anything to a tree up in Woodland Park, World War I field days. Just keep that in mind if you're going to tie some stuff up to the tree. Okay, let's go to the next one here. So I'll take a couple of these and throw back over to Mr. QRP, but probably if you were to look at the bands that are most popular for QRP operating, you can certainly operate any band you want, with the note maybe at the bottom of about 80 meters. But I think you'll find a lot of operators operate 20 and 40. That's where you're going to find most QRP operations. And this is probably a look-see over 10 years, right? Because like right now, 10 is probably pretty good. But if you look at it over a long period of time, you're probably going to find more QRP guys on 20 and 40. But you have to plan your antennas out pretty well, especially if you're doing a picnic picnic or a picnic table set up at a campsite or something, is important, but if you're going up to the high country, you probably are going to take both one or two antennas, and it's usually going to be 20 and 40. Now, 30 meters is actually a really good option, as you all know. You're limited there to power, and you're not going to be running sideband there, right? But there is one opportunity at 10 megahertz. Also, if you look at 10, 12, 15, 17, and 20, and you're backpacking or you're doing something like Scott does, your antennas are going to be really small. Your bounds are going to be small, so you can kind of keep that in mind. If you're going somewhere where you do have a picnic table and you're camping or you're going to parks on the air, people do that, then the smaller antennas may not be as critical. You can probably put up whatever you want in the tree. I just think it's funny. But anyway, no one laughed at my joke.
No.
In the tree, okay. And then 80 meters, we've had Terry, WB3EZ, he ran 80 meters QRP from his house. It was a very compromised antenna, but there are people on 80 meters, and you think it's a rag chew type band, right? But there are QRPers on 80 meters, and there might even be on the top band, 160, I don't know, but you're certainly allowed to operate QRP on any of the bands. All right, and then don't forget about 6 meters, 2 meters, and 7 centimeters, because if you're doing a summits on the air and you take a handy-talkie with you and you're going to try to work for 2 or 3 hours, and you're at 10,000, 11,000, 12,000, 13,000 feet, you probably don't need to run a lot of power in the first place. And so you're going to be operating QRP. It's not going to be a 25 or a 5-watt radio, a 5-watt transmit radio. You may do 5 watts, but you're probably going to run it down to half a watt. You're probably going to make all the contacts you want at even lower power than that. So we'll throw 2 meters and 70 centimeters in there for QRP opportunities as well. So the bottom line is this: there are thousands and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people, just hams, just in the U.S. that operate QRP only, right? And so regardless, if you're out and you have the opportunity to get on any of the bands, and you have an antenna that matches pretty well, or you have a tuner, get on there. Here a little bit later, we're going to go through this list, which will give you a little idea of where you might find some QRP stations. But go there and give it a shout. Chances are you're going to find somebody.
So real quick on here, at your home station, just a quick show of hands, are you operating daylight hours more than you're operating dark hours? Show of hands for the daylight operators. After dark operators. Okay. The after dark operators, are you also operating in the daytime remotely? Okay. And the reason being, you need to learn your bands, and you need to learn propagation. If you're going to go play QRP, you need to understand that to try and figure out if you're wanting to get to a specific part of the country, maybe you need to understand what bands you want to operate on, so your best probability is to get there. Brenda, one of our club members, her son lives just outside of Huntsville, Alabama. She's out here in Elizabeth, and they want to have conversations. She goes, well, what antenna and what radio should I do, and how do I get Mark, my son, to be on the same one? I said, well, when are you going to operate? She just, the grasp of when to operate on that band, she had not mastered yet. So she has now, because she has frequent conversations with Mark and back and forth. And I went, when I was in Huntsville for a trade show last year, I went and tuned his antenna for him and got to see his home station and play radio there a little bit. So I got to see both ends of it now. And it's really fascinating to see. But setting up your antenna, if you're QRP and you're going to run an infed antenna, doesn't matter what direction you put your antenna up. The answer is yes, it does to a point, depending on the antenna. So it depends on where you want to get, what time of day it is, and what band you're on, how you're going to orient things. And that's why these QRP operators have an advantage over just that home station. Because at home, a lot of times you're limited on what direction you can put that antenna up. maybe it can only run north and south. So you're gonna go east and west real well on that type of antenna you put up, for example. But you wanna work Canada, it starts getting tough. The QRP operator, he goes to a park, or she goes to a park, she can orient that antenna the way that it needs to be so that they can make the contacts in Canada if that's what they want to work that day, or down in Mexico, or some other part of the world. You can orient your antennas a little bit better because they're smaller, they're lighter. You have to set it up. Why not set it up the way that it's going to work best for you? So back to you.
Absolutely. And we're not gonna spend like a tremendous amount of time on this because we don't want to, offend anybody, but the truth of the matter is that on QRP, CW is king, right? It just is. So how many people have run QRP and have used CW? Tom's hand went up 3 times.
Yeah.
That's his operating mode, right, Tom? Pretty much.
Well, I appreciate that I can run 10 watts voice and BQRP, so when I get tired.
Got it. Well, in any
It's like
case,
a coffee
this is gonna be a plug for learning QRP, okay? If you
CW is a good thing.
I learned Morse code, CW, 13 words a minute to get my license many years ago. And I said enough of that. I got my license. I didn't touch it again until maybe just a few years later, just a few years ago. And I'm not real good at it, but one of my goals this year is to try to improve my CW skills. And what better way to do that is playing on QRP, right? I know Scott's working on that as well. But we'll talk a little bit about CW. Scott, you want to take this one?
So with that, how many digital operators of the FT flavors, doesn't matter which one, works better than phone for you, does
Good.
Morse code is the ultimate in that digital format, right? It's gonna work better for you. Unfortunately, JD's not here, or Dana, and N0G. They are CW gurus, those 2 guys. They are really good. If you need help, reach out to one of them, and they will definitely help you. I know last year, so the goal this year at Field Day, JD will be there. JD saved our bacon last year. Band conditions sucked. CW won, and he was making contacts when we were trying and we couldn't make a contact, and then JD took over with CW. So the goal is to get my CW skills up. If you're okay, that's my goal, to be able to play more CW there and do it. The exchange is quick and easy. You already know what the exchange is, other than getting their call sign. It's just mastering, really just mastering call signs. And that's about it. So it is an attainable goal still between now and June. I keep telling myself that, but anyway, we're working on it.
So I will just say the last line here. I'm going to plug Terry WB3EZ a couple times, but this last line, Terry, I can just see him sitting right here and writing that line, okay? Because he's very passionate about CW, but CW is a huge part of the history of amateur radio. So if for Terry, that's probably the only reason, one of the only reasons to operate CW only. But it is. It's a big go back. That's where it all started. So, all right, let's go on here.
Quick CW story, really short one.
Go.
4th grade, I was learning CW with my best friend, and we were able to master enough of it that during tests we could use our pencils and erasers to send the information back and forth. CW is king. Go ahead.
And your friend's name was what?
Statute of limitations is not over yet.
His dad might have been Leon. Thought his son might have been Leon. They might have known.
His dad was the county attorney.
All right. Okay, so sideband works very well when the bands are open. And if you're going to buy a QRP rig, I mean, this is a great time to do it, right? Maybe a couple of years ago would have been better, but we still have a couple of years of solid band conditions. Now, I will tell you that one of my elders from Oklahoma many years ago. He got DXCC during the lull in the solar cycle, working QRP, right? So when a lot of people say, why does anybody work QRP when we're at the bottom of the cycle? There are a lot of people that doesn't matter to them. I mean, they're probably having a little more fun at it, right now. Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe when they make a contact at the bottom of the cycle, they're more excited about it. But in any case, this is a great time to go out and get your 10-watt radio and 5-watt radio and get on the air, because we're going to have this for about another 24 months or so, and then we're going to start sliding just a little bit. And then you can sell your QRP radio to me, and I'll give you
Fair deal. So real quick on that, show of hands, who participated in the 40-meter NDIS exchange this weekend with the PRA? Did anybody look at band conditions? Yeah, what were they, Joe?
There was weak on 80 and 40.
Yeah, it was in the red and the yellow on my recording. For 40 meters, the band was basically closed. And if you looked around before we got on the air, we're hard pressed to find another station on 40 meters. But yet we had 14, if I recall correctly, in the exchange. And we had no problems communicating because we were doing it in NDIS. So it's a little different because we didn't care about band conditions. We just needed one spot in the ionosphere above us that was working really well for us. So anyway, don't give up on band conditions. Change your methodology. Try NDIS if the bands are closed. You'll get somebody closer. Kansas, Nebraska, Texas, New Mexico, Wyoming, and Utah are miserable on phone in most modes unless you operate NDIS. They're a piece of cake over there. So keep that in mind when you need those neighboring states or counties that you're shooting for.
The other challenge I would throw out is when we do our first Saturday of the month NDIS net, and you're hearing people, start lowering your power. Right? Let's do a test. Just start lowering your power. Can you still hear me, Randy? Scott, can you still hear me? All right? Jim, can you still hear me? Let's play with that a little bit. Maybe you might find that you can get down to.
Yeah. So a quick show of hands. I started at 99 watts is what my radio is set at home. So I was at 99. So a show of hands for those guys that bring your hands up if you were part of the 40-meter exchange. Okay, leave them up if you operated 50 watts, 25 watts. Still got a couple. 10. So, 10. So we had 3 people get down to 10 watts and give that a try.
Yeah, so we can try that next time. All right, cool. Okay, so I think Scott can make a couple of comments here. Maybe we can get Tom to make a couple of comments, but don't rule out some of the digital modes. Some of the digital modes that have really popular the last 10 years are fantastic. They're absolutely fantastic for low power operation. They really are. And FT8 is a good option, but there's several others. Tom, give us a rundown, maybe 2 or 3 others that you know of.
Well, the QDX is what I have in my office at home, and it's on a small mag loop antenna inside the house. So it's like totally worst case scenario. But I can talk to people on the West Coast, Washington and California really easily with about 2 watts on QDX, JSA call or something like that. Sometimes it is really frustrating because like this afternoon the bands were closed. And I was hearing nothing on 20 meters. And it was just until I looked up, ham clock online, whatever that, looked up propagation. So there's no propagation. But I exchange messages with people periodically. They leave a message for me, I leave a message for them, and I'm running 2 watts, and they're 1,200 miles away or something. So it works.
Yeah, I think there's probably 2 categories for digital. Some is on the air, Scott can make a comment on, but and then there's maybe everything else. So because a lot of times you need a computer, right? right? You need some way to run the computer. You need you need that. You need some cables, and things got to get all hooked up and everything. So it's not ideal for something that's on the air in most cases. But if you have a 705 where you can communicate almost without cables to a computer, and or a QRP labs, I mean, using Raspberry Pi or whatever. I mean, if you're not doing the backpacking thing, digital is much easier for QRP. And then some people run it at their house as well. I've run my little QDX little digital transceiver on supposed to put out 5 watts, but I think mine's
3 is about all I can ever get.
yeah, about 2 or 3, and I've made numerous FTA contacts all over the world. It's amazing. Now that's going through 80 feet of coax to an antenna. It's not tuned perfect, so think about that. I've got loss in the coax, I've got loss of the antenna, and I'm still working Europe and I'm getting good signal reports. So now what about, Scott? You do the summits on the air. I know some of your friends do some digital. You don't do a lot of digital that way, but just talk about the digital piece for summits on the air.
So, and I have to agree with Paul here. Summits on the air is a unique challenge because typically distance and altitude and backpacking, you're limited on how much stuff you're going to bring, depending on how far it is. I mean, I've done some summits that were from here to the parking lot. I don't care what I haul, it's okay. But I've had some much longer ones. So in that group, typically, these digital modes of the FT flavor, FT8, FT4, JS8, Olivia, Hellscriber, any of the other ones that are out there that people play with are going to require a laptop. Typically, you want it backpackable, so it needs to recharge by 12 volt. And then the cabling can get just incredibly hard or really simple if you're running like the FT7 or the ICOM 705. You've got one here, Dave. So Dave's got some show and tell. Randy's got some show and tell. Bring some. No? All right. Anyway, that'll be at the end here. You can kind of take a look at some of these. But I know the ICOM, the 705, which the club has one that we will loan out. That one is Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and it will connect to your computer without cables. And with a minimal amount of home testing and setup, it really is pretty seamless. You can get some small little laptops now that are 12 volt rechargeable, so you can recharge it in your vehicle when you're going from different places. And it's working really well for some folks. The 705, in my opinion, is a great radio, fantastic radio. It's not for me backpacking. It's still too big. I like small. So, but I go further than I want to carry the 705 to. So digital modes for us, other than CW, when I say us, SOTA, CW is king. You can do that digital mode. You're still playing digital, and it works in a key ways next to nothing in most cases. So that's kind of how we do it. Unless you're doing a short hike, usually that's not part of the game plan.
And I would say Parks on the Air. How many people are participating in Parks on the Air? Yeah, we've got a couple people on here tonight. Chad and Ray, they're just going crazy on that. But when you're doing most of the Parks on the Air, there's really not any reason you can't have a digital setup if that's what you want. Now, I would still say this. I had a digital setup when I had K3 Elgrad. And it's a lot of cables again. It's a lot of cables. The 705 makes it so much easier. And so the advantage there is really you're on the air quicker with the 705. I mean, if you think through Parks on the Air, you get there, you want to get your contacts in, you're going to be on the air quicker with something like that, or bring it all hooked up, bring your KX2, KX3, everything already plugged in and everything, and you've tested it. And that comment is really important. No matter what we're talking about tonight, you need to be testing all of this in your backyard.
Oh,
okay?
Yeah.
All this in your backyard. And I tell the story, and I'm pretty sure it was the president of our club, Dan, that did this, but
Well, his initials were Dan.
his initials were Dan, but yeah, he gets old around, or actually wasn't that far, but we were out somewhere doing, Parks on the Air, and, he had everything there and was ready to go, and, one connector. He needed one connector that he didn't have to get on the air. Now, fortunately, somebody else had that connector. But testing, making sure you have everything in your backpack. QRP is probably more critical in some ways, especially if you're going anywhere away from the car, away from the vehicle, any hiking. Make sure you have tested all the equipment, all the connections, and make sure you have all the connectors and cables, right? You don't want to get out there and you have a great antenna, just threw it up in the tree. And then, you got everything set up, you hook your battery, you don't have any coax, right? So that's happened before to people. So that's planning is really, really, really critical, maybe more so on QRP. Okay.
It is for sure. I can tell you, every trip I find something that I went, oh, I didn't throw that in. However, I have a backup usually somewhere else in my pack of it because I've learned my lesson on more than one hike that you got to double up on pretty much everything. But the real secret is for folks just kind of starting, whether it's powder or soda, it doesn't matter. You're going to go out and you're going to operate in the outdoors. Set it up at home. Make sure you have all your connectors. And then that goes in whatever travel bag you're going to go with. Whether it be a backpack, a portable box, whatever you're setting up, put it all right into that box. And then go in and pack yourself the extras that you know you're going to forget. Coax, connectors, an extra battery, that type of thing. And, that way you'll figure it out. How many people own some kind of RV, travel trailer, something? Your first trip out, what'd you forget? Man, I forgot all kinds of stuff. So we camped in the backyard our first trip. The second trip, we still forgot stuff. It applies there, it applies to you.
And we're not talking about just HF radios. I'm going to throw this one to Scott as well, but make sure you charge the battery for your handy-talkie, because when you get up on top of the mountain, right, or you're in a park, you want to make a couple contacts via 146.58 or 146.52, and if you don't have a charged battery on that, you might have a great HF experience, but not the battery. So why don't you talk a little bit about VHF, UHF, QRP as well, Scott?
So most of your HTs are 5 watt HTs, plus or minus water too, depending on which version you get. So how many people have used your HT in a portable environment on Simplex? Okay, there's a few, oh man, a bunch, all right. And with that, you quickly learn two things. That rubber ducky doesn't cut, right? So you need to start looking at some form of alternate antenna. The other is a secondary battery, because when I backpack and I'm doing a summit, or I'm going to go out deep into the forest for whatever other reason, I have my HT with me, it's on, and I'm listening typically to a simplex frequency while I'm hiking. Now I get there and I want to play radio, but my shoulders are bumping into my cheek and the radio gets keyed, and now the battery's just about dead. It's dead as soon as I key up. So I do carry a spare battery because for the fight. And then I can do my activation of whatever I'm doing, and whatever's left on either battery will get me back home. So do think about antennas. If you want more information on VHF and UHF antennas, I've got a plethora of them that I have played with, and I'll loan them out to you. You can play with them. But my absolute favorite antenna that I have found is one of two. The telescoping whip that's about 39 inches tall, 5/8 wave, 2 meters, works fantastic. They are cheap, and you can collapse them down. They're not obnoxious to carry, and that's a lifesaver. That's number one. The other one is arrow antennas, is one of my favorites. Everybody has probably seen or played with the UHF, VHF arrow antenna. So it's 4 elements on 2 meters, and I think it's 6 or 8 on 440. I don't use that one. I have it, but it's too big, it's too heavy, it's too bulky. I talked to Jim at Arrow Antennas at Dayton years back, and I said, Jim, I'm a backpacker. Your antenna is too big. I need a smaller one. He goes, I've been working on this. And he now makes a 3-element backpackable VHF antenna. So it's got one boom that's 24 inches long. The elements stored inside the boom. I drilled it out, and it weighs less than anything I carry, other than a little piece of coax to go on it. And now I have a Yagi antenna that is directional, and that thing is just amazing on peaks. So if you want to play with something like that, bring it out. Let you guys play with that one as well. It works great.
So I think we've covered most of this, but we talked a little bit about parks on the air and summits on the air. But I call this anything other than hiking up in the mountains. I call it picnic table operation. Maybe your knees like mine don't work well for long trips in the woods anymore. 10 miles to the summit or whatever. Usually I can get up, but I don't have good luck getting back down with my knees. So really what we're trying to say here is that anywhere you want to operate QRP, you can do it. It can be parks on the air, summits on the air, your backyard, your QTH station. You can be at Fuzzy's in the parking lot after lunch or before lunch or both or whatever. But get on the air with low power, and I think you'll find it's very, very fun and rewarding.
So on that note, we've got an event coming up that's going to fall right into this.
We do.
And what is that event?
I don't know. But we have several, Scott. So I was confused on that, but we have a parking lot rodeo coming up. Scott, what is a parking lot rodeo?
So who's been to our parking lot rodeo in the past? Oh man, a lot. Who has not? Well, we got a treat for you. So the parking lot rodeo, as we call it, all right, no animals harmed in this. Or even used. Generally, we try and find a parking lot somewhere local. And those of us that have any QRP type equipment, portable equipment, can bring it out. It does not have to be a mobile based setup. Mine are not. But Ray, for example, I'm sure Ray will be there if he's not in the park. Ray will have his radio installed in his truck, his antenna that's a screwdriver on the back of the truck. That is a parking lot rodeo vehicle. So we will have vehicles set up with some of the antennas, and there is a shelter or a pavilion that we will have some tables set up with different QRP setups. It will allow you folks to come out and see it and talk to those who own it and pick their brains a bit. But more importantly, most all of us will have them on the air where you can give them a try and see what works for you. And maybe it's something you're interested in or you want to try, or you're between this version and that version, or this antenna and that antenna. It'll give you a real good one-on-one to see what they do, see how much they cost, see how light or heavy they are, and if it's going to work for you.
And it's also a good opportunity if you don't have a mobile radio in your vehicle.
Yes.
You can look at other mobile installations of VHF equipment too. How they do their antennas, how they do their power. It's amazing. So we usually get 40 or 50 people minimum at these. It'll be a Saturday morning from about 8 to 12. I believe it's going to be on May the 23rd. And it's going to be in the parking lot down here at Hidden Mesa, just before you get to Franktown. So more on that, but that's coming up here. And just,
it is on the calendar.
It is on the calendar.
Forget the date, time, or location. It is there.
Let's talk a little bit about QRP radios for just a second here. I think this is very, I think the information is absolutely accurate when it says $20, $2,000. If you buy a KX3 or KX2 and you get a couple options on it, you're going to be at $2,000 plus. But if you buy a kit radio like Brad, 84BA, or Terry built, you can buy kits at Hempfest for $20 to get on the air. There's a lot of manufacturer here to choose from. We're going to talk about kits in just a minute, but if you want to buy something that a manufacturer builds, there are a lot of 818s and more 817s out there as used radios. They're all band, all mode, but they're great little 5-watt or 6-watt HF radios, and they're absolutely fantastic CW rigs, by the way. I would say if you talk to anyone that's had an 817 or an 818, they will tell you without the filter, they kind of suck on sideband. But out of the box or with the CW filter, either way, they work very, very good on CW. But unfortunately, ever since Yaesu canceled that radio, the 818, prices have just continued to go up slightly. You used to be able to buy them for $250 and $350. I don't see them much under $450 anymore. If you want anything from Elecrack, whether it's this one, this is their CW
KH1.
KH1, or KX2 or KX3, any of those are fantastic QRP radios. None better. You're not going to find a better receiver. You're going to find more features. Scott and I have this discussion all the time. The 705 and the new Yaesu FT something X, whatever, they will blow these L-crafts away on features all day long, right? Color display, waterfall, all that. But you're not going to find a better receiver anywhere for sale than an L-craft KX2, KX3. So some of the L-craft stuff are kits, and some of them you buy fully built, so you have some options there. The new Yaesu FTX1 Field, everything you read about it online is absolutely fantastic. It doesn't have some of the Wi-Fi features, unless you buy some add-on things that the 705 ICOM has, the IC705, but it's a fantastic QRP radio, and you don't have to buy the 100-watt version, right? That's the cool thing about the Yaesu offering. You want to buy it's 5 watts, or 6 watts, or it is 10 watts, depending on your power supply and the battery and that type of thing. So if you buy the field unit, it's about $1,300 something new. Not seeing a whole lot of them used, but IC705 ICOMs are you can get them in the $1,000 range now, so they're coming down a little bit used. But there are some older QRP rigs built by L&R Precision. We've talked a little bit about the QRP labs and some of the SDR transceivers that are out there, the Zygoos and stuff like that. I mean, they're all going to work very well for you, and they some of them are strictly QRP rigs. Some of them have a little more power, like the G90 Zygoo, but you can run it in a QRP mode, no problem at all. There's some old Tentec rigs that are pretty cool as well. They made QRP rigs back in the day, and you can find some of those used. Now, I'll throw this next section over to Scott, because one of the things that I think is cool about QRP antennas is we as a club have built several of them during our Elmer Night sessions. How many have built antennas here with us? Okay, quite a few. So let's go back and talk a little bit about building and buying QRP antennas for a minute.
So the big advantage here with QRP, as I talked, is things are smaller, things are cheaper, both buying them pre-assembled or building them yourself. The exception being that little L-Craft AX3 antenna that I have is stupid expensive. That's a demo unit, so I'm okay with it. It's $269 for that antenna. And if you get the other little whiz bang things, the case, some other things, you're pushing $300 on that antenna. Is it worth it? Absolutely not. No. My go-to antenna, I spent $8 on, and it fits in the palm of my hand. It weighs less, it works better. I can deploy it pretty much anywhere. I would have a difficult time in the National Mall deploying my antenna there. That would be too. But I can arrange it, I loan it, you can give it a try. So building antennas is, as you have experienced in this, the overnights, one, it's a great learning environment. Two, those antennas we built on the wire antennas, they are QRP antennas. They'll handle maybe 40 watts, but really they're built for 20 and less. It's really what they were, because the balance and stuff that we were doing were fairly substantial compared to what I also do. One of the antennas that I really fallen in love with and I really like is K6 ARK, kind of out of Southern California. He offers some kit antennas, and you buy, it'll be the toroid, a little bit of wire, a circuit board with a little surface mount capacitor on it, and a BNC connector, and instructions on how to wind that and set it up for 4 different antennas. You make it the way you want it, you assemble it, but once it's assembled, it's that type of antenna you build. So I've got one that's a 49-to-1, I've got one that's a 9-to-1 that I've built. I'm looking at building a couple of others of his in the same offering. But the beauty is it doesn't weigh anything. The kit costs 19 and change, so about 20 bucks. And you supply the length of wire depending on what antenna you're building. So I have one that's got 63 feet of wire. I've got one that's got 34 feet of wire. They're infit pseudo half waves that work really well for the way I operate. So you can get an antenna 20, 25 bucks. So it's not going to break the bank. That's the beauty of it. You learn a ton building them rather than just buying a pre-built one. And you understand more of the fundamentals of how things work and why they work. And when they break, they're a lot easier for you to fix. It'll take you a couple minutes. I broke so many antennas. The wire breaks, it strips, it does something, the connector fails. The Jeep ran over a connector one time and I had to put a whole new one on there. So anyway, $4 and it's fixed, no big deal. So anyway, antennas, buy them, build them. Really, I encourage everybody to build them. If you guys find an antenna that you would like to build, send an email off to the board with plans of whatever it is. Let us take a look at it. Maybe we can roll it into an overnight and do another build. We're always looking for a fun build.
And if you want to buy something that's pre-built by manufacturer, there's just tons of stuff out there as well. There's some companies that they just cater to QRP operation, and they build very high quality antennas, and some of them are very pricey too.
Yeah.
They can easily push $80 to $150. But if that's your thing and you need something, you don't have time to build it this week, and you need something for an outing next weekend, then get on the phone with DX Engineering and they'll send you what's the
Pack 10 is on the big ones. They're around $100.
Isn't it some QRP builds? The small ones, they have a low power line and a high power line.
I know what you're talking about, and I'm drawing a blank on
Get it out.
what they're called. DX Engineering has a big offering.
The other thing about gear is just a lot of, we talk about QRP, it's about current draw. Now you can certainly operate QRP at your house on your 7300, but when you turn the power down to 5 watts, you're still going to be drawing 5 or 6 amps right on receive. But keep in mind the dedicated QRP rigs like an Elecraft, you're under 100 milliamps on the receive, right? And so they're very, very efficient for what you're using them for. And so that translates well to backpacking. We're just going out here with my fiance Carrie. Just going out to park bench down here at Cotton Canyon and setting up. Sometimes you just want to go light there too. But just understand that that's how it works. The QRP dedicated rigs are going to draw less power and are going to require less battery.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah.
Just keep that in mind too. Everything you buy for a QRP rig essentially is going to cost you less money when you build it or buy it. Smaller batteries, that type of thing. And we'll throw a plug out for the Bieno batteries. They're fantastic. They're safe. They're better than some of the other things we're
Been around a long time.
And I had some for years and years and years. You get a 2 amp, 4 amp, 6 amp. 9 amp, 12 amp, whatever, and, yeah, you can get whatever you want. They're fantastic and they last a long time. Okay. Just some pictures here. QRP Labs up in your left corner. Yaesu 817, top right. This is an aircraft, KX1, which has not been manufactured in 25 years or not been sold in 25 years. They're still bringing $450 to $650 on the used market. And of course, Brad has one because Brad has one of everything. Okay, and that's not a joke. Brad has one. He's built every kit on the market. Every kit that's been built in the last 10 years. He owns everything, and he owns one of those. Here's a KX3 Elecraft. Could be one of the finest Elecrafts ever built, but maybe not the best for backpacking QRP. That'd be the KX2, but now it's the same. And then we got the Mountain Topper down here that is a company that's no longer in business, but another company. Actually, it's LNR Precision. It was a company, but I think somebody's building something similar to that Mountain Topper now. A little weird in terms of how it operates, in my opinion. And then we go all the way down here to an ICOM IC703. Anybody have one of those? That is a 10-watt QRP radio that looks like the big brother, which is the ICOM 7000. And they're getting really hard to find, a little long in the tooth. And then you have one of the old Tentex down there that are still around. If you want to play a little CW, you can get some of this. So that's just a quick overview of some of the radios that are out there. Okay, let's wrap this up pretty quick talking about kits. We just talked about Brad, AB4BA. Almost everything he has was a kit that he built. There are kits now that there are kits. There have always been CW kits, and there are a lot of those today available. But there are sideband kits now, and there are just almost anything you want to build in the way of a QRP rig. You're going to find some flavor out there. A lot of the stuff comes from China now, and actually most of it is pretty darn good. And Brad can give you some direction on that if you're wanting to buy a QRP rig from eBay. I definitely would talk to him before you buy anything. The second bullet point here is definitely from Terry, EDZ, because if you build something, there is probably workmanship and accomplishment, a piece of gear that you assembled yourself. And a lot of these QRP lab kits that come out, you can buy one built from the factory, but if you buy the kit, there's a huge network that you can draw on. If it doesn't work, you can send it back to the factory. You can get people to help you with it. You can find people in the club that build the QRP lab stuff. So a lot of references there. Kits reinforce radio theory. They teach component function. Make sure you know which way the diet goes, and then that's all on me. I'll tell you that right now. And then you really become a smarter amateur radio operator when you understand more about the theory and all the components. And when you sit down at lunch at Fuzzy's, you can talk to Brad, and not maybe you know everything Brad knows, but you can nod, and you'll know quite a bit. So anyway, that's all good, and most all these kit builders now, they're all building QRP stuff. There's hardly anybody building 100-watt kits anymore. There were a few companies there for a while, but it's much more complex and long time frame. If you have the skill sets, it's still a long time frame to build a kit that's a 100-watt radio. So there's not going to be those out there. Now, putting an Elecraft together from a kit is a little different than it's not so much soldering. It's more putting pieces together, things of that. That's a little different type of kit. So those are available out there as well.
So in kit building of radios, they come in 4 flavors. One is through-hole design. The other is surface mount design. You have to have a very unique skill set to do the surface mount. Good optics, steady hands, a fine solder point, and probably some previous kit building experience would go a long ways in building surface mount products. So you have through hole or surface mount. And then once you solve that dilemma, you need to look at, you want it to be CW only, or do you want it to be multi-mode CW with phone and or any other mode that you want to operate? So those are kind of the four flavors that these kits come in. I will tell you that for through hole, to build a full HF radio, the ultimate is still the Elecraft K2. That kit has been available for 24 years. It is still available today. They've been able to redo a few components for the new, to get the parts that they needed. But that kit is still available. It is a through hole design, but it is a 10-watt radio. The 100-watt amp is unobtainable right now. The parts they've not been able to convert to get that to work out. But that is a fantastic through hole build. It's a small radio. It is QRP, but it's for desktop QRP. Elecraft on the opposite side of the spectrum for the KX3 is offered as a kit. The K3, which was a desktop version, and the new K4, which is currently factory assembled only. The small radio on Paul Shirt, the KH1 and the KX2 are factory assembled only. They're all surface mount technology. You can't do anything with it. But the KX3, the K3, and soon to be the K4 is a modular design. You will assemble it much like you want to build a computer at home. How many people built a computer, your own PC? Much like that. You're putting boards in places, putting standoffs in, maybe a ribbon cable here or there, or a wire connector here or there. Zero soldering. The hardest thing was zero beating my kicks, where when I put it, you have to put a wire around the oscillator and you zero beat it. That was as hard as that was. So really it's just assembly. So most of the radios are that way available right now.
Now, let's say you don't want to start with a transceiver. Okay, that's fine. Because if you haven't soldered in a long time or you're picking that skill set up, this next little short paragraph is for you. You can buy all different types of kits that require soldering, but you can buy dummy load kits, SWR indicators, keyers, audio filter, power meters, digital frequency counters, battery monitoring devices, solar charger controllers, on and on and on. And from our friends over there in China, you can get all these kits and more. And if you want to learn again, maybe you soldered years ago, you want to pick that skill set up again, buy a dummy load kit.
Yeah,
or
a signal generator. There's just a handful of
and
components.
then work your way up to a tuner. And then when you get that mastered, find something else that's similar in skill set, and then buy the QRP Labs or whatever. But don't jump right into QRP Labs transceiver if you haven't done a lot of work with soldering over the last several years. You need to build that skill set back up. And surface mount devices, if Brad brings it, we'll have him bring that again. He just built a I don't know what it was, honestly, but it was all surface mount. And the workmanship is amazing, but he has specialized equipment, heat guns and this and that and other, to solder those components that are extremely small. So we'll get
It's probably 2 inches by 2 inches.
Yeah.
The surface board had 80 components.
80 components.
Also,
They're all nearly all surface mount.
Yeah.
There might have been a couple that weren't. Those were the ones I offered. Not the rest. Yeah. Okay. Couple of things on the antenna kits. We covered really all of that, but keep in mind that there are. I'm going to say there's 20 companies out there that build antenna kits, and some are better than others. And so, again, before you go down that path, talk to Scott, talk to Brad, 84BA, those two individuals, talk to Randy, he's getting ready to show us something. But ask, right? Because some of the stuff out there really is junk. And some of it's not. But for the most part, ask those people that have the knowledge and that probably have built the antennas, and they give you some direction on that. And then just some of the companies we've already talked about, those QRP Labs, QRP Guys, are they still around? I don't know if they're still around.
Yeah.
Pacific Antenna, 4-stick QRP, HF Signals. Some of those companies, these companies come and go. If you're at Dayton, there's an event called 4 Days in May. We're not going to get into that. But on Thursday night, if you get there early, you can go to their vendor night, and you're going to see all these manufacturers that are individuals sitting at a little table with their wares in front of them. And these are the movers and the shakers in the QRP world today. And
It was all QRP.
it's all QRP. That's all it is. Really cool antennas. They bring a product, and almost everybody sells out that night. And if they have anything left over, they keep it reserved. You know, they bring it to the date and the next day to sell it. But you definitely want to get out there. If you're out there Thursday, you can look that up online. And it's free to go to their vendor night. I've gone every year for years. It's really cool. Okay, we're going to try to wrap this up here. So some of this is directly from WB3EVZ playbook. When you work QRP, you learn to be persistent. How you time your calls makes a difference, and patience is a huge thing. It's a huge thing in QRP. Scott's already mentioned this, and I cannot emphasize this enough. You really need to understand propagation. If you don't, sit down with somebody in the club that understands it and that can go through that with you. We have a pre-made slide deck that we'll have to share with you called HF operating techniques or something, and it talks about propagation. Really, really critical at the lower part of the cycle, okay? Not as critical as where we're at right now, but still very important. You definitely need to understand tuners, feed lines, and the limitation of those two, okay? You just have to think through some of that. And a lot of us, in the past when I did QRP, I didn't need a tuner because I built an antenna that was dedicated to whatever band I was using that day. Super, those work really well, but you have to plan that a little bit. Calling others instead of calling CQ can be more productive. I completely agree with that. You're going to hear other people on the band, and they're going to give their call sign, and they're going to say, I'm QRP outside of Portland, Oregon, or whatever. You know, you hear that, and you try to jump in before the pileup starts, and that's one way to do it. And the other way is simply to call CQ yourself, and on the calling frequencies that are listed on the sheet that we gave out. And either way is going to be productive. One maybe more so than the other, but maybe it could be due just to the propagation of time of day or whatever. I ran field day one year, QRP, from the back of a Toyota Tacoma, and it was very frustrating and we made a few contacts, but I do think that this time of the cycle, this is appropriate. Where there are QRP only contests, there are some of those, get on the air there. Absolutely. Where, when we get to, DX, what's the big one in the fall? Bill, big one in the spring. CQ worldwide, and ALRL worldwide. You certainly can give QRP a try. There is not any reason you're not going to make contacts. As a matter of fact, when you give your call sign and you say your QRP, almost every single time they're going to take you first. Almost every single time without fail. Now, I don't necessarily suggest this type of operating that I'm going to tell you to do, but you know, you technically should give your call sign and then you could say I'm QRP, but you could just say QRP. Okay, you just said QRP. You know, someone will come back to you and say, was there a QRP station in there? And you give your call sign, you're good to go. But that's not technically the best way to do it. But basically, get on the air with contests because you will be first on. If they hear you, they're going to work you first. I guarantee. And that's one of the best ways to work a contest. Yes, Tom.
I just say my experience with POTA, because I do POTA QRP usually out hiking. So I'm sitting on a log somewhere, and I can't spot myself because I'm not on the grid, or like there are ways to do it, but I usually don't. I found I'm lazy sometimes, and I just try to like spin around, and I find someone, I try to break through a pile up. That's harder to do than finding an open frequency, as long as it's not a contest, and calling CQ, because in the clear, with QRP, people can hear me all over the country. But I may not be able to break into a pile up. So calling CQ and doing that, just activating the bark, and calling CQ through QRP sometimes works better because they can hear you if you're not in a pile up. But it may be hard to break through a pile up. There's a bunch of guys in Kansas with Yankees, 1,500 watts.
Right, and POTA and SOTA are sought after contacts for people.
Yeah.
You know, especially the POTA hunters and SOTA chasers, and get all the terminology in there. They are looking for those unique contacts, and you become that unique contact. So don't be afraid to get out there, like Tom says, find a clearing in the band, and move that band real quick.
Yep.
Before we do that.
And don't assume, you might assume that someone on the air station is QRP. You might assume that. But don't assume that every park's on the air station is QRP, because if you, when that person says, life's too short for QRP, those are the exact words that Ray said. Okay? when he bought his 100-watt rig for parks on the air, bags for thousands. So a lot of you people running parks on the air stations are not QRP. And again, they're going to want to work you if you tell them that you are. Now, last thing, here, the number one tip for all operating, whether it's QRP or not, what do you think that is? What's the number one tip?
Just get up there.
Okay, I'll give you that. So that's a very good one, but it is, listen. Right? Because when you're listening to how it all works, right? You're listening to how the contest works. When you're listening to how the summit on the air station is working other stations, when you're looking how the parks on the air station is working on the station, you listen first. Listen for 10 or 15 minutes. Understand the cadence. Understand if they're taking calls on the first call or the second call. There's all different types of things that we can talk about for a couple hours. But that's the number one tip, QRP or not, listen before you transmit. Okay, we've got this sheet here. Scott's going to go over that.
So, two papers you got. One is the generic band. Blue, colored one. Okay, I'm not going to go over that one. The one that's kind of a yellow or gold color. The takeaway on this is pretty simple. And there's a lot of information in there, but the number one takeaway off that sheet, I'll let you read it at your leisure, take it home for reference, is if you're going to operate sideband, your main working bands we already covered were what? What are the two big ones? 20 and 40. So for sideband on 20 and 40, it's 285. 7.285, 14.285. That is where you will find the QRP folks doing sideband, plus or minus a little bit, but they're going to start there. If you're CW off, it's not 0.85. And you will start finding the QRP operators on 7 and 14, 0.85 as well. Depending on what's going on that band, but that's where that's the fishing holes you will find. The other one I'm going to cover that's not on the sheet, at least I don't have a classic where I can find it, is 2 meters. So PRA, our simplex is 146.46, okay? However, the national simplex calling channel is 146.52. And what is the other prominent frequency?
5.8.
5.8. What's that called? Any name for it? It's called the adventure frequency. So that is big in both SOTA and POTA. 5.2, usually like on a weekend, if you're going to go operate, go to 5.2, say I'm a SOTA operator, I'm going to go to the adventure frequency, I'll be on 5.8 and move over to 5.8. And anybody listening to 5.2 will easily roll to 5.8 with you and give you all the contacts you want, whether it be SOTA or POTA. So use the calling frequency to make the announcement, move off of it. August, the first weekend in August, and I don't have my calendar up, but roughly the 5th of August, whatever that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday is the 14er event in Colorado.